In this video, I'm going to be taking your level 0 background skills up to at least level 8. My name is Bijon, otherwise known as Zeno, and to all my new viewers, welcome to the Graybox. I know, I can feel your art block, your anxiety, everything. Where do we start? I can't draw a tree, I can't even draw this. Don't worry, I'll tell you. And intermediate artists, you'll get a nice art buff from this too, so don't go anywhere. But first, you gotta pay the class fee by liking the video, subscribing, and also sharing it with your favorite art community. Somewhere, I don't know, just share it. Well, I certainly hope you're subscribed now, because class is about to start. I have some exciting stuff to announce at the end of this video, so stick around for that. Alright, it's time to pay attention. Previously, we did our first installment into the anatomy series, and next time, we're covering industry character designs. Environments, backgrounds, can come in very different shapes and sizes, quite literally, but there are very few bounds to what is possible in the hands of a qualified artist. But what about the beginner? What about you, shaking in your baby seal leather boots? Well, it's quite simple to begin learning, really. Let's start with some walls. We're gonna be drawing brick, stone, and glass. For brick, it's far more simple than it's often made out to be. Take some full horizontal lines like on notebook paper, and between them, just add some quarter-length vertical lines, and you get brick. For stone, just place half vertical lines scattered around and chisel away at the continuity of those lines. It looks tattered, and that's what we want. Any lines that ended up looking kind of wiggly, we can just recycle those to show exposed layers of the stone's skin. Stone has this, and this adds a level of authenticity and erosion. For glass, I usually do diagonal half lines extending from the edges inward. When a highlight is cast on the outside of glass, depending on where you're standing, this creates that immense glass glare that you can't see through unless you step close enough to block that highlight. We'll draw some stick figures right next to it for different scale references, but this is just how glass works, okay? Just get up, stretch. Hey, stretch your fingers. Don't you dare get burnt out on me. Before we continue, let's look at some isometric shapes. These are transparent 3D shapes made to assist in memorizing the space these little guys take up. Everything we just drew was literally just little rectangles and squares. Remember, day one, we went over shapes and simplification. Every shape you draw is a miniature canvas, regardless of your art subject. And what we added to them for visual effect is called textures. This is why these rectangles look like they're different objects. Even though they're all the same shape, they have a different texture, a different material. Keep thinking of everything you draw as shapes or Papa no kiss you. Platonic kisses, the kind that, you know, like on the cheek, whatever. Now, how do we draw wood? Well, we just studied isometric shapes just a tiny bit. You kind of get the gist with those. So let's block in the shape of a wooden log. But how do we make that pattern? Well, I mean, it's sort of the same way you can go about drawing braids, for instance. It's just one shape that's mirrored and overlapped over the top of each other several times over. But for this case, we're gonna be using a sort of wizard staff as an example. You see that swirly bit? That's what wood tends to have on it a lot. And if you want to make something that's sort of whimsical, then you might want to add these little swirls to your bark textures. This is great for fantasy environment design, but it's also great for just stylizing modern design as well. Now, the way I usually go about texturing a wooden log, especially given the bark, is that we actually add tiny little shapes embezzled on the outside. This gives it that look like if you touched it, it would feel like a tree. So do keep that in mind. But if you haven't watched it already, 2 weeks ago I uploaded a 15-day challenge. We've already carried a lot of that knowledge over into this video, especially from day 1 and day 2. If you missed it, no problem. Go check it out, rewind this video. However, some of you really wanted extra tutorials related to the 15-day art challenge, so I've got some YouTube shorts you want to look out for in the coming days. Now, as for the background footage here, I want you to study this without me saying a single word. As is tradition with these videos, we're jumping from beginner level to about intermediate. This is done with the intention for you to study things on your own time. I want you to study after every video, and I'll check up on you the following week. Now it's time for environment design. We've talked about shape language before, and I want you to think about that through this next segment. Keep it in the back of your head because we're gonna be using it. But for now, we're gonna break down the shapes of this tree. This is a real photo of a tree, and we're just gonna figure out the pattern that the branches snake around in. This is highly important for us to begin innovating. I decided to go for a design that tells a story. Every environment should, and this is no different. This tree seems to be one of great wisdom that has survived many wars. Perhaps sort of set in the Edo era of Japan, but with a fantasy twist that screams giants once lived. With a size comparison reason being that the humans are very tiny compared to this tree, but you still see this massive banner and this broken arrow sunken into it. Something bigger than humans had a war here. Now, admittedly, I don't really know what cabins looked like in Edo era Japan, but we're gonna design one in a sort of fantasy way. Built into the surrounding creek and sort of secluded from the rest of society. This would likely be where an old huntsman lives, or something like that. I decided on a creek setting because this house would be found along the path beyond the great tree. When I was thinking about the tree we designed, it dawned on me that usually whenever the roots split in two like that, it's because of erosion beneath the tree itself, whether a great flood happened or whatever the case may be. Maybe the creek used to run there and it actually used to be a full-on river. But regardless, this house would be found along that path, and I wanted to keep the thematics in check. And as a highly important side note, in most industry jobs, you don't actually get rid of your references from the project file. You keep them there for your art director to review. And this even applies to your portfolios. Don't remove your references, just add notes. This is coming from someone who's actually had to hire game artists before. Now we're finally getting into drawing this cityscape. This was teased in last week's video. And one of the best points of advice that I think I've ever received when it comes down to drawing cityscapes in general, or just environments, is to lower the horizon line as much as comfortably possible. And of course, this depends on where you're standing and where your perspective is, but in almost every case, lowering the horizon line to flatten the ground creates so much more depth. And more so than that, it grounds your environment in realism. It makes it feel like you're looking at the world through the eyes of someone else. For this piece, I took a little bit of my street photography experience, noting one thing in particular. Usually whenever I was in a good enough spot to take a photo, there was almost always something above my head. So for this, as the viewer, I wanted something to be above my head. I went for a sort of cold and muted selection of hues with a lot of warm tones mixed in. I really wanted this to feel like the ghost of summer was just howling through the winds of autumn. And in the most ideal situation, I wanted to emulate that feeling of having a 40-minute walk home after a late high school band class. The feeling of summer just having ended, with the leaves turning orange and everything feels just a little bit emptier, but at the same time, it's a peaceful solitude. We're well past the summer now, getting into the winter. And just a few days ago, if you're American, it was Thanksgiving. Now, most of my family is Native American. I don't really celebrate Thanksgiving anymore, but if there's gonna be a time that everyone celebrates to be thankful, this channel at least warrants something. The support you guys have given me, just verbally in the comments, has really helped me to push forward through some very tough times. Recently, my computer has broken down, and editing videos has been something that I literally do on my phone using CapCut. But I've been unable to work, and this channel was, believe it or not, a last resort. So thank you so much. Because of your support, I really want to give back, and I want to keep education free, and I find that I'm really passionate about this thing. So I have a GoFundMe, and it's not just for this channel. I'm going to be bringing comics and animation to a country where it's terribly overlooked, here in Tanzania, to teach people that being an artist has business opportunities. Along with that, I'm starting my own indie comic publishing site where you're essentially self-published, but you submit your own manga and comic works, and we review it, we publish it. To better summarize it, it's a self-publishing platform. Again, our Discord community is in development right now. The server isn't available because I'm still working on it, and I'm the only one working on it, but I would greatly appreciate your help and donations if you can, because this is gonna go far. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope that you continue. Even if you can't donate, just watch my videos. Honestly, that's enough for me. Just thank you all. Have a good night, morning, evening, wherever you are, and as always, I will see you next week.